Why whaling in the Arctic was miserable. 1947, amidst the icy expanse of the Arctic, an epic battle commenced. Not a clash of armies, but a confrontation between man and nature, specifically between whalers and one of the largest creatures on the planet, the blue whale. This engagement lasted for 38 long hours, only to end with the capture of a mere 2-year-old calf. And if you think that sounds exhausting, try imagining being part of this hunt for several months straight. It was a nightmarish ordeal. What made it worse was that such hunts were not a rare occurrence. They were a regular part of life during the whaling era in the Arctic. This begs the question, what drove these men to subject themselves to such grueling conditions? To understand their motivation, we need to delve into the depths of history, where the demand for whale oil triggered a frenzy of industrialization and human endurance. The allure of whale oil began in the early 19th century, when the world was basking in the glow of the Industrial Revolution. This period saw an unprecedented demand for energy resources, a demand that traditional sources like coal and wood could no longer meet. Enter whale oil, an abundant source of fuel extracted from whales, offering a seemingly endless supply of energy. The first whaling stations in the Arctic were established in the 1840s, marking the beginning of a new era in whaling. As the years passed, the industry boomed. By the late 19th century, there were over 30 whaling stations scattered across the Arctic coast, employing thousands of men and producing tons of valuable whale oil. But this boom came at a cost. Life for the whalers was far from idyllic. In fact, it was a daily struggle against the unforgiving Arctic environment and the colossal whales they hunted. Imagine yourself aboard a wooden ship creaking on the waves of the frigid Arctic Ocean. The air is thick with the smell of salt and the constant spray of seawater stings your face. The sun beats down relentlessly, reflecting off the vast white expanse of snow and ice as far as the eye can see. You are here to hunt whales, but you're not alone. Accompanying you on this perilous journey are men driven by the same desire for the precious whale oil. Men who have become so jaded that they've opted to remove all clothing above their waists, exposing their weather-beaten bodies to the elements. These men have seen too much of the Arctic's harsh realities and have given up on the comforts of civilization. Some sport tattoos of mythical creatures on their bodies, a desperate attempt to find solace in the face of utter solitude. The monotony of the endless white landscape is occasionally broken by the haunting cries of gulls and the distant rumble of whales. The cold seeps into your bones, a constant reminder of the unforgiving environment that surrounds you. Days turn into weeks, and the isolation begins to take its toll on your sanity. The silence is deafening, broken only by the howling wind and the creaking of the ship. The men around you grow sullen, their faces haggard and drawn from the relentless battle against the elements. Then comes the moment you've been waiting for. A whale is spotted in the distance, and the crew springs into action. Harpoons are loaded and flung, and the chase is on. You watch as the whale, a majestic giant, thrashes in the water, its lifeblood staining the pristine waters crimson. The hunt can last for hours, a test of endurance and skill, and when the whale is finally brought down, there's a mixture of triumph and sorrow. The crew members, exhausted but exhilarated, gather around the carcass, ready to extract the precious oil. But as they hack into the whale's blubber, the stench of rotting flesh fills the air, a grim reminder of the price paid for their bounty. Now imagine having to endure this ordeal for months on end. That was the reality of life for whalers in the Arctic. They were trapped in a cycle of hunting, processing, and surviving, with little respite from the harsh conditions. The work was backbreaking and dangerous, and the men were constantly at risk of injury or even death. One slip of a knife while processing the whale could mean a gruesome end. A fall on the icy deck could lead to frostbite, and the unpredictable nature of the sea meant that storms and shipwrecks were always a looming threat. Yet, despite the dangers, the whalers persevered. They were driven by the promise of a better life, a chance to escape poverty or life at sea. For many, whaling was a family tradition, passed down from one generation to the next. Others saw it as a way to make a quick fortune and return to civilization with enough money to last a lifetime. Whatever their motivations, these men risked it all to venture into the icy depths of the Arctic. The Arctic itself was a formidable adversary. The region's extreme cold, unforgiving terrain and unpredictable weather created a hostile environment that tested the limits of human endurance. The men had to contend with freezing temperatures, blizzards, and the constant threat of hypothermia. The darkness of the polar night, where the sun barely peeked over the horizon, added to the sense of isolation and despair. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the Arctic was the wildlife. The region was home to some of the most fearsome creatures on the planet, including polar bears, walruses, and, of course, whales. These animals were not only dangerous, but also a constant reminder of the power of nature. Despite the challenges, the whalers forged on, adapting to the harsh environment and developing ingenious methods to survive. They developed specialized tools for hunting and processing whales, and they learned to navigate the treacherous waters of the Arctic. They also developed ways to cope with the isolation and the darkness, finding solace in music, storytelling, and camaraderie. However, as the years went by, the whaling industry began to decline. The population of whales plummeted due to overhunting, and the demand for whale oil decreased with the advent of new technologies. By the early 20th century, whaling in the Arctic had become a thing of the past. Today, we look back on the era of Arctic whaling with a mix of fascination and horror. It was a time when humans pushed themselves to the limits of endurance, venturing into one of the most inhospitable environments. On April 26, 1848, an expedition of 2 ships got trapped in the ice of the Arctic Ocean. The ships were the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror, and with them were 129 members of the Royal Navy. Their mission was to try and find the elusive Northwest Passage through the Arctic, but unfortunately, they never made it. What happened to these ships and their crew has become known as the Franklin Expedition mystery, and there are some truly terrifying theories about what may have caused the ships to become trapped and the crew to vanish. Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about one of the greatest maritime mysteries of all time, so stay tuned. So the expedition was led by Sir John Franklin, an experienced Arctic explorer. He had already made 3 previous expeditions into the Arctic, but this time things would be different. Unlike his other expeditions where he had sailed as far north as 80 degrees north, this time he wanted to go further. He wanted to reach the legendary Northwest Passage, a sea route that would connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Arctic. He was given 2 ships, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror. They set sail from England in May of 1848 and arrived off the coast of northern Canada in September. They anchored in what is now called Terror Bay and began the long trek through the ice. But almost immediately things started to go wrong. The ships became trapped in the ice and the crew had to abandon ship and trek across the ice to find help. All 129 men set off across the ice, but only 12 men would make it back to the ships. The rest were gone without a trace. An investigation was launched and it was discovered that those who had died from starvation and exposure. There was no evidence of a fight or foul play. All of the supplies that the men had taken with them had also been left behind, suggesting that they had intended to return to the ships. But what they didn't know was that the ships had been crushed by the ice and sunk. And this brings us to the first theory, that the crew simply froze to death trying to get back to the ships. However, this theory doesn't explain why all of the supplies were left behind. Theory No. 2 is that the crew was attacked by the Inuit people who lived in the area. However, the Inuit people had no reason to attack the crew and there is no evidence that any of the crew had weapons or supplies taken from them. Theory No. 3 is that the crew was attacked by polar bears. This is a more likely theory as polar bears are known to attack humans. However, it's unlikely that they would have attacked a group of 129 people. Also, the crew would have put up a fight and there would have been signs of a struggle. Theory No. 4 is that the crew was lost in a blizzard. Blizzards can easily disorient people and it's possible that the crew was blown off course and lost. However, again, this doesn't explain why all of the supplies were left behind. Theory No. 5 is that the crew fell victim to lead poisoning. Lead poisoning can cause hallucinations and other strange symptoms. It's possible that the crew was exposed to high levels of lead, and this caused them to act strangely and eventually die. Theory No. 6 is that the crew was infected by a virus. A virus could have easily spread through the crew and caused them to become sick and disoriented. This could explain why they left all of their supplies behind. Theory No. 7 is that the crew was abducted by aliens. This is the most unlikely theory, but it's still a possibility. There have been many reports of strange lights and objects seen in the sky over the Arctic. It's possible that the crew saw something that they couldn't explain, and this caused them to panic and run away. As you can see, there are many theories as to what happened to the Franklin expedition, but no one knows for sure. The Earth's surface is covered by ice. It's hard to believe that under it there may be something incredible waiting to be discovered, like old whaling ships. Imagine that. Scientists have managed to find these ships in Antarctica using an underwater radar that was designed to detect objects beneath the ice sheet. The expedition was carried out by researchers from Durham University in the UK and the British Antarctic Survey. They used a radar system mounted on an ice-jammed ship called the RRS Ernest Shackleton to look through the ice. How? The radar sent out sound waves at a frequency of 200 MHz into the ground. The waves bounced back after hitting an object and were picked up by the ship's 18 receivers. Each receiver could pick up signals from one of the 18 sides of the ship. By measuring how long it took for the waves to come back, scientists could tell how far down the object was and how big it was, and by comparing the signal from each receiver, they could figure out where the object was. This is pretty cool technology and it lets scientists learn about the land underneath the ice without having to drill holes in it. They found 3 sunken whaling ships from the early 1900s near the shore of the Antarctic Peninsula. These ships are not just interesting because they're old or because they're under the ice. There's more to the story and I'm going to tell you all about it. So let's start with the first ship they found, the Sir Ernest Shackleton. This ship sank in 1909 when it hit a hidden reef. While trying to get close to shore, it was named after the famous explorer Ernest Shackleton, who led an expedition in Antarctica from 1907 to 1909. But he was NT on board the ship when it sank. The ship went down with 34 people on board, but only 19 of them survived. The wreck was found at a depth of 25 meters below the water surface and buried under 20 meters of sediment. It's pretty amazing that this ship has been preserved so well under the ice for over 100 years. The second ship the researchers found was the CPT, John Davis. This ship sank in 1929 after running into an iceberg. Luckily, everyone on board was rescued by another ship that happened to be nearby. This ship was found at a depth of 40 meters below the water surface and buried under 35 meters of sediment. Again, it's amazing that this ship has been preserved so well for so long. The third and final ship they found was the Katahu. This ship sank in 1916 after being abandoned by its crew. It was found at a depth of 28 meters below the water surface and buried under 25 meters of sediment. It's also pretty amazing that this ship has been preserved so well for over 100 years. Now you might be wondering why these ships were found now and not before. Well, it's because the area where they were found was covered by ice for most of the year until recently. Climate change has caused the ice to melt and reveal these ships to us. In fact, scientists believe that there may be more than 100 wooden ships buried under the Antarctic Peninsula's Larsen ice shelf. Most of these ships are likely to be whaling ships from the same time period, but there may also be other types of ships such as those used for exploration or research. The discovery of these ships is important because it gives us a unique opportunity to learn about the history of whaling in Antarctica. Whaling was a major industry in the early 1900s, and these ships are like frozen time capsules from that era. They can teach us a lot about how people used to hunt whales and live and work on whaling ships. Scientists are excited to study these ships in more detail and learn more about them. Now you might be thinking, why do they just go ahead and raise these ships to the surface and put them in a museum? Well, it's not that simple. First of all, these ships are very old and made of wood, which means they're likely to fall apart if they're raised too quickly. They're also buried under a lot of ice and sediment, which makes it hard to access them. Finally, raising these ships would be very expensive and time-consuming. It would require a lot of people and equipment to do the job. Right now, scientists are happy just knowing that these ships are there and that they can learn about them without having to raise them. Who knows what the future will bring? Maybe one day we'll be able to see these ships for ourselves. Now let's talk about some of the other cool things that have been found under the ice in Antarctica. Antarctica is full of surprises, and one of them is an ancient volcano that was discovered under the Ron ice shelf in 2020. Scientists were shocked when they found out that there was a volcano under the ice shelf because it had been hidden for so long. The volcano is about 2,700 meters high and is located in the Ellsworth Range in Antarctica's Ellsworth Mountains. It was named Big Ben after the famous clock tower in London, because it's the tallest mountain in the range. What's really amazing about this volcano is that it's still active. Scientists have been monitoring it, and they think that it might erupt again soon. They're keeping an eye on it just in case it does erupt, because it could cause a lot of damage. Not only could it destroy the ice shelf, but it could also release a lot of gas and ash into the atmosphere. This could cause global temperatures to rise and could lead to more climate change. Another cool thing that's been found under the ice in Antarctica is a subglacial lake. A subglacial lake is a lake that's located under a glacier or ice sheet. In 2014, scientists discovered Lake Vast, which is the largest subglacial lake ever found in Antarctica. It's about 250 kilometers long and 50 kilometers wide and is located beneath 37 kilometers of ice. What is interesting about this lake is that it hasn't been in contact with the outside world in over 20 million years. That's a long time to be isolated. Scientists are studying the lake to learn more about how life has evolved in such an extreme environment. They're also interested in learning more about the geology of the area and how the lake formed. But what about the fish? You might be wondering if any living things have been found under the ice in Antarctica. Well, yes. Actually, scientists have found a lot of living things under the ice in Antarctica. One of the most amazing discoveries was made in 2017, when scientists found a new species of fish under the ice in Antarctica. The fish is a type of ice fish and it lives in the Southern Ocean. It's about 15 centimeters long and has no eyes or bones. What's really amazing about this fish is that it doesn't need oxygen to survive. It can breathe underwater without oxygen, which is unheard of in the animal kingdom. Scientists are still trying to figure out how this fish can survive without oxygen. They hope that by studying the fish they'll be able to learn how to better understand human health. Overall, Antarctica is a truly amazing place, and there is still so much that we do want to know about it. The ice sheet covers up a lot of the continent, and what lies beneath remains a mystery. With new technologies and methods, scientists are constantly making new discoveries about what's under the ice in Antarctica. Who knows what we'll find next? Perhaps even more amazing than the things I've already mentioned. The discovery of these sunken ships is just the beginning. We may never know what other secret. I just wanted to pop in here quickly and say hi. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but this is my channel and I make videos about all things tech, toys, collectibles, and whatnot. So why am I popping in here today? Well, first off, to say hi, and secondly, because of this right here is a brand new exclusive figure from a company. This is the captain's cabin in winter. I'm going to open this up, show you what's inside, show you the details on this figure and tell you a little bit about this new line of products that is coming out. So let's get this opened up. Here we go. Pretty cool looking packaging. Of course, it has all the details about the product on the back. The figure stands a little over 7 inches tall, weighs about 13 ounces. That's without the box and everything else. But man, it looks so good. I love that there's actually some snow on there. So you can see, wintry, you've got some icicles hanging down. Got the North Star logo right there on the side. This thing looks absolutely fantastic. But let's go ahead and open this up and see what else we get in the package. On the back it says open here. So apparently that's the way you're supposed to do it. Let's check it out. Okay, we've got our figure right here. We're gonna take him out of the plastic. Don't really need that anymore. Gonna set him right over here. And then in the bottom of the box it looks like we have 3 different pieces here. Oh, and there's instructions. The 3 pieces are for the beard. This is the base. These are the 2 sides of his beard. He comes with a beard. That is awesome. And if you look close at the face itself, you can see a little bit of detail work right there. So there's a little bit of printing on the face. Now I don't know how visible it's gonna be on camera, but it's kind of hard to see even in person. But they did do some nice detail work on that. Even on the hands themselves, you can see some nice detail work. The gloves, the fur trim on the inside, they're actually leather trimmed. The fur is a different material than the rest of the body. So some nice details there. He's also got a little bit of a belly on him. Kind of reminds me of Santa Claus. He's a little bit chubby. Looks great. Nice and detailed. Okay, so now we're gonna set him on the base. The base does attach via magnets. So there's a magnet in the foot and then there's another magnet in the base. That's a nice touch. I always like when figures have a removable base or something. That way you can display it however you want. And as you can see, he is definitely leaning up against that mast. So it is designed to be displayed in an upright position. But if you wanted to remove the base, you certainly can. Now before we move any further along here, let's take a closer look at the actual cabin itself, because this is one of the coolest parts of the figure. Everything on the cabin is removable, so this whole thing opens up and then the roof lifts off, so it's got a nice magnetic closure there. It lifts right up, and then you can open up the front door. The shutters on the front open up as well, so the shutters are attached via magnets. Same thing with the roof. That's just a nice touch. And then you can open up the front door and there's a little window in the back, so you can see all the way through the cabin. This would be where the captain sleeps, I imagine. Who knows? Maybe he has a bunk bed back there. I don't know. Fun little details though. There's a nice little clock on the wall. I love the little weathering effects they have on the wood. This looks like real wood, just like the figure looks like leather and fur. All these materials look so realistic. Very cool. Even on the roof, you can see some weathering effects. Same thing on the door. It looks like a real wood door. I love it. The icicles, as I mentioned before, hanging off the side. Look at that. So cool. I didn't realize it at first, but the figure was designed with a light in mind. So there is a light that goes inside the cabin. There's a little hole right there, and then there's a little cover that hides it. So that will allow you to light up the interior of the cabin. That's a cool feature. Let's put the roof back on here. And then I wanted to show you that there's some detail on the other side as well. So the other side of the cabin has some shutters, and again, they're attached via magnets. So they're easy to open and close. They look great. I think it's really cool that they included this extra detail on the back of the figure. A lot of times companies won't do that because you're not going to see it, but they did anyways. It looks great. You can see more of those weathering effects on the wood right here. This door is locked. I wonder if the door on the front opens. Yep, it does. So that's nice. We've got some little lanterns hanging from the ceiling. Cool. Some nice little detail work there. Got a little stove right there. That would be where the captain would cook his meals. And of course, it wouldn't be complete without a bottle of rum. Gotta have that. Always gotta have that. I love this figure. It looks absolutely fantastic. Before we wrap this up, I wanted to mention a couple of things. So this is part of a new line of products that is being released. So you might remember a while back they released a long room. This was a large diorama that had the long room from the tavern in Hobbiton. This was an absolute steal, because it was only $40 and it looked fantastic. I think I still have mine. I don't know if I displayed it, I'll have to dig that out. But this is basically the same thing. This is the captain's cabin. It's a smaller version. Obviously it comes with the captain. The long room didn't come with anybody. It was just the room itself. So this is basically the same concept, but it's a little bit smaller and of course it comes with a figure. One of the things I wanted to point out is the attention to detail that went into this figure. From the weathered wood to the fur to the leather, everything looks so realistic. And that's one of the things I love about these figures. It's the attention to detail. They could have easily gotten away with just making the basic shapes, but they took the extra time to add all these little weathering effects and realistic details. And it really shows. I am very impressed with this figure. This figure is a 1:6 scale. It's about 7 inches tall, and it is priced at $250. I know that's a little bit pricey, but considering the detail that went into this and the fact that it's handcrafted, I think it's worth it. Well, that's about all I wanted to talk about for this video. Like I said, this is the captain's cabin in winter. I hope you enjoyed this unboxing and overview. If you did, please hit that like button, it helps out a lot. And if you're interested in this figure, I'll leave a link below. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.